You know this story. Boy, giant, 5 stones, 1 shot. Goliath falls. Except David doesn't walk away. He runs to the body, pulls out the giant sword, and cuts off his head. Most people think he's making sure Goliath's dead. But watch what happens next in the text. 40,000 soldiers who've been frozen for 40 days suddenly move. They shout, they charge, they fight. David didn't behead Goliath for himself. He did it for an army that needed to see the giant was actually gone. Today we're opening 1 Samuel 17 together, the 30 seconds after the stone lands, because that's where the real story is. The armies of Israel are camped on one hillside, the Philistines on the other. And every morning for 40 days, the same thing happens. A man walks into the valley between them. Bronze armor head to toe. A spear thick as a tree branch. He's over 9 feet tall. You'd have to look up to see his chest. He shouts one challenge. Send someone to fight me. If he wins, we're your slaves. If I win, you're ours. 40 days, same voice, same words. 40,000 Israelite soldiers do the same thing every single morning. Nothing. This isn't one coward. This is a collective paralysis. Every man has heard the voice, seen the size, done the math. And fear has taught them the equation always ends the same way. Fear doesn't just stop you. It rewrites what you think is possible. That's the valley David walks into, a place where the enemy's voice has gone unchallenged so long, it sounds like truth. When David hears Goliath, he doesn't hear what everyone else hears. He hears a man mocking the God of Israel. And he asks the question no one's asked in 6 weeks. Who is this guy? And why is everyone standing here? David refuses the armor, picks 5 stones from the stream, walks into the valley with a sling and a shepherd's staff. Goliath laughs, calls him a dog, promises his body to the birds. David says, "You've got a sword and a spear. I've got the name of the Lord." Then he runs. Not walks, runs. 1 stone, forehead. The only place the armor doesn't cover. Goliath falls forward into the dirt. The valley goes silent. This is where you think the story ends. Underdog wins, giant falls. Roll credits. But look at the army on the hill. They're still standing there, watching, not moving. They see a giant face down in the dirt. What they don't know, is he dead or stunned? 40 days of conditioning doesn't vanish with 1 stone. You need proof. Evidence so clear that fear can't whisper, "What if he gets up?" That's why David doesn't stop. David runs to where Goliath is lying. He doesn't have a sword, refused one, remember? So he grabs Goliath's sword from its sheath and uses it to cut off the giant's head. That's when everything breaks open. Not when the stone hit, when the head came off. That's when the army on the hill could see, no question, no doubt, the giant wasn't getting back up. That's when the Philistines realized their champion was finished. That's when 40,000 paralyzed men finally moved. The text says they shouted, ran into the valley, chased the enemy all the way to their own gates. But none of that happens if David walks away after the stone. Beheading Goliath wasn't cruelty. It wasn't overkill. It wasn't even about making sure he was dead. It was about breaking a spell that had 40,000 men trapped. For 40 days, Goliath had been doing more than threatening. He'd been narrating. telling a story about who held power and who didn't, who could speak and who had to stay silent, what was possible and what wasn't worth trying. And Israel believed it, not because they wanted to, because no voice had stood up to say otherwise. Fear doesn't just scare you, it becomes the story you tell yourself. After enough repetition, you stop questioning whether it's true. It's just what's real now. Think about the last time fear narrated your life. Maybe it said you weren't ready, the gap was too wide, the risk too high. And maybe you believed it, not because you checked, but because it was the loudest voice in the room. David didn't beat Goliath by being stronger. He beat him by refusing to let the giant define reality. He walked into the valley and said, "Your voice doesn't get the final word here." But even that wasn't enough. The army on the hill didn't just need to hear a new story. They needed to see the old one end, completely, visibly, no room for doubt. That's why the sword mattered. David could have assumed they saw the stone land, could have trusted they'd figure it out, could have walked off and let the body lie there. He didn't. He finished. He gave them proof they couldn't argue with. And he didn't just win a fight, he broke a spell. Fear is a spell. It's a story repeated until it feels like fact. The only way to break it is to show, in a way no one can deny, that the thing you were afraid of is powerless now. Israel needed to see the giant's head in David's hand, not because they wanted blood, because they'd been staring at that giant every morning for 40 days. They needed their eyes to confirm what their hearts couldn't believe yet. It's over. The moment they saw it, they moved. David didn't behead Goliath for Goliath. He did it for his brothers, for the soldiers too afraid to breathe, for everyone who needed permission to believe the threat was really gone. Sometimes the bravest thing you do isn't defeating your own giant. It's making sure the people around you can see it's finished, because your freedom might unlock theirs. You probably don't have a 9-foot warrior in bronze standing in your valley, but you might have a voice that's been shouting long enough you've started believing it. A voice that says you're not enough, that you missed your shot, that the thing in front of you is too big and you're too small, and nothing's gonna change. And maybe, like Israel's army, you've been standing still, listening, waiting. Here's the shift. The giant only has the power you give its voice. The moment you stop letting it narrate your reality, the moment you step into the valley and say, "This doesn't define me anymore," the equation changes. But private victories aren't always enough. Sometimes you need to make the defeat visible. Finish what you started. Pick up the sword and make it so clear the giant's gone that fear has no script left. Not to prove anything to the crowd, but because the people watching, your kids, your friends, the version of yourself still afraid, need to see it's actually over. They need to see you pick up the sword. After David severed Goliath's head, the text says the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout. They chased the enemy, plundered the camp, took back what had been stolen. But none of it was possible until someone showed them the giant could fall. There are people in your life standing on a hill right now, watching your valley, wondering if the thing you were afraid of can actually be beaten. They're not judging you. They're waiting. Waiting to see if it's possible. Waiting for proof that fear doesn't get the final word. When you walk into your valley, when you face the voice that's been shouting at you for 40 days or 40 years, when you pick up your stone and run toward the giant instead of freezing, you're not just rewriting your story. You're giving everyone watching permission to rewrite theirs. That's why David had to cut off Goliath's head. Not because the giant was still dangerous, because the army was still afraid. And the only way to set them free was to make the victory so visible, so undeniable, that fear had nowhere left to hide. What's the giant in your valley? What voice has been shouting at you, unchallenged, rewriting what you think is possible? And who's watching? Who's waiting to see if you'll step into the valley? Who needs to see you pick up the sword? The stone knocks the giant down. The sword sets everyone free. If this landed today, it landed for a reason. Come back next week. We'll turn the page together.